Hello relatives, welcome to this week's Schlagbite for the week, April 16th, 2012, entitled Stop and Smell the Roses. Sally is a 50-ish-year-old businesswoman who suffers from panic attacks. The kind of fear that comes from not being able to breathe, crushing chest pain, call 911 kind of terror. And paramedics would come and take her to an emergency room, and sometimes she'd be admitted, but almost invariably the tests were negative. I've seen Sally over the years, and she understands that her panic attacks are most likely to occur whenever she's feeling alone and vulnerable. And she knows that they stem from a lingering childhood fear about being abandoned. She can recall that as a 5-year-old, she went to the emergency room for what were thought to be asthma attacks, and that these events were often triggered when her parents would leave her in the care of a nanny when they went on long business trips. Sally understands the unconscious dynamics of her behavior, but having insight doesn't necessarily change behavior. So whenever she sustains a significant loss, she's lost 2 husbands and lovers and has had business setbacks, she finds herself getting trapped in that old panic highway. Because insight into the problem doesn't necessarily change the behavior. To change behavior, you have to give your brain a new set of instructions. Otherwise, you get swept up in the traffic of that old, well-worn path of your patterns. You have to create detours on the highway of destructive habits. That's the task. And in order to get out of the old ruts, those old, familiar, almost reflexive patterns, you have to look from a new perspective. You have to alter your consciousness. And your brain has the capacity to create new neural pathways. It's a quality we call neuroplasticity. And the good news is it doesn't matter how long you've been repeating dysfunctional, hurtful habits, you can always choose to change, as long as you find the will and you get some training and support. When you feel weak and faltering, here's how you go about creating detours and getting into a different consciousness. Human beings have been doing it since the beginning of time. Ancient healers would chant and drum, pray, light incense. Yogis alter consciousness by altering the way they breathe to get into meditative states. Monks chant and dervishes dance, and these are all trance states that allow the brain to see the familiar in a new way. They all create detour signs that give the brain new instructions. And one of my favorite ways to alter people's consciousness is the use of guided imagery, telling stories and rituals, and I created such a path for Sally, who learned how to make a rest stop on the panic highway. Stop and smell the roses. And she wrote a new ending to that old panic story. So if you want to hear a little more about how I do that, how I help create new endings with people to their old stories, join me in my first webinar, which is going to happen tomorrow for Gesundheit to initiate their webinar series. Tomorrow, April 17th at 5 o'clock on the West Coast, and it's going to be 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and check your time zone in other continents. You can register at anymeeting.com /healingdoc1. And if you'd rather read about this stuff, get my new book, Stop Your Shit Shoveling. You can find it at the healingdoc.com store. Enjoy being with you. Take care. Remember, we're all connected. Nobody makes it alone. Joy on the journey. I say this for all my relations. Mitakuye.